Richard, back in the mid-90s, if I recall, there was a big conflict arising in the state of Chiapas. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. The uprising was largely indigenous, and to my mind, the very best thing they did was to actually unite all the Indians at one time.
Wow. What a task.
It was a task, and since the conquest...
And we're talking hundreds of thousands of people here.
Yeah, and what you're talking about is 500 years of domination, and in the domination by the largely Hispanic groups.
By the judges that wouldn't marry you because... Right.
In those groups, it's sort of the divide and conquer and play one group of Indians against another. But on top of that, you have traditional conflicts which go back 1,000 years. I once had a woodworking class with 14 kids, and when I got there, 11 were in the shop and the other 3 were outside. And I asked them, the 3 why they were outside. And they said, well, it's all chill inside, and we're lock and down. And
we don't mix.
We don't mix. And those, the Zapatistas, to my mind, the best thing they ever did was actually to unite all those Indians at one time.
I can only imagine the power the empowerment that was brought upon them with that.
Sure. And then there's some... you think Catholic workers are anarchists. You should see the Indians down there. I mean, it's an anarchy.
I mean, and it became an armed revolt, and it took a long time. It took years to suppress it, right? And maybe some seeds are still existing now.
It's interesting, the violence that is existing now that's centered around Zapatista communities and so on. I am pretty sure that it's a consistent policy which goes back, which predates the Zapatista conflict. And part of it is the fact that you have these rich families who controlled the entire political life for hundreds of years.
Right. And the same story of El Salvador, Nicaragua, and beyond.
And you've got up around Simjovel, there are 3 families that still run everything.
Good to see you. Safe travels.
Okay.
Yeah. Good luck with the work. Thank you so much for documenting.
Love you.
Love you too.
All right.
All right. Safe travels.
Right on. Thank you.
So you've got these 3 families that still have paramilitary squads.
Yeah, I mean, they have their own little armies.
Right.
Their own gangs and their own killers and their own machine guns.
And so they, now much of that's been mitigated through the government since the massacre of Las Abejas.
Tell us a little bit about that. I'm pretty well informed on Mexico and Latin America, and I haven't heard about it.
In Las Abejas, I can't remember the year now, it was a group of people who split off from the Zapatistas because of the violence.
I see. And Las Abejas is a village or a location that means...
It wasn't a location, it was a group of people.
A group of people, okay.
And they were...
and Las Abejas means
the bees.
The bees, yes.
And those people were up in the northern part of Chiapas. They... were actually in church services. They're almost all Catholic. And they were attacked, and 42 people were killed by paramilitary, who are largely evangelicals from a dominant family. It was actually a bad mistake, not just from the killing part, but from the political perspective, because it sort of organized the opposition against the violence.
I see. Okay.
But it, at the time, the effort was from the part of the evangelicals was that they could confront a Zapatista group that was armed, because that was to them a fair fight.
I see.
But with the nonviolence, they had no solution to that other than their violence.
They had no guns against that.
Right.
Not for the long term, at least.
And in the end, I think there's been some substantial changes in that region because of it all.
Okay. So where are things more or less now? I mean, as far as political situations and the indigenous groups and all of that. I mean, with all the drug problems and all the other violence that's entangled in all that.
First, let me say that anybody who says they understand what's going on in Chiapas is a liar. There's no way that anybody can understand.
Right. It's just too complex an equation. They might understand a small part of the equation, but that's about it. Yeah.
There are still ongoing conflicts between evangelicals and Old World Catholics, like what you get in San Juan Chamula. There are still the Zapatistas themselves, by and large, have concentrated on their communities and on building cooperatives and working on things like adult literacy.
Damn communists, huh?
Right. And working on clinics, medical clinics. And they have a birthing center up in Ocosingo. They have a couple of woodworking cooperatives, and we've been working with the woodworking cooperatives.
That must be so great to be around that and visit all that and be.
I've also seen some of the reports that they've done on health and maternal health and so forth. They're concentrating on that stuff.
I see. Sure. And so they've pretty much given up the armed insurrection. I mean,
well, they don't let anybody know that they have.
Okay.
But there isn't much going on now.
Right. Because at one point, I mean, I remember, they had one leader that became quite well known. I can't recall his name now. Marcos, Comandante Marcos. Yes. Right. Is he still alive and around?
He is. And but what people fail to remember is that he said from the beginning that he was a subcomandante.
Yes.
A sub-commander.
Right. He was.
And there are 19 of them. And he's only one of the 19.
Yeah, I see. But he's the one that came out
as... He's the spokesman because he's one of the few who has good Spanish.
I see.
The others are all indigenous.
And he's obviously indigenous. Yes, okay.
Now, so, and he's still around, and there's still work going on, especially in the alternative governments. And they're a political force to be reckoned with, although they say they're not a political party, and they won't run candidates. They won't back candidates because they don't believe in the political process. So much of what they're doing, it's great stuff. There's also a lot of stuff being done in their name which really isn't theirs. But they refuse to, if it's indigenous folks who are doing it, they refuse to say that it's not them.
Okay, great. So let's break it up here for a minute.